My name is Carla Johnson, and I live in what should be a peaceful little suburban enclave. Should be, being the operative phrase. See, I have a neighbor. Her name is Lucy Carter. She's the kind of woman you read about on Reddit, the kind that makes you shake your head and wonder how someone can be so filled with unadulterated spite. Lucy is old, bitter, and, let's just be frank, incredibly racist. I'm a black woman. I bought my house, a beautiful, well-maintained craftsman with a sprawling backyard, 5 years ago with money I earned from my tech startup. Lucy, I suspect, has never forgiven me for it. From day one, she's made my life a living hell. Passive-aggressive comments about my loud music, I listen to jazz at a reasonable volume, thinly veiled insults about my type of car, it's a Tesla, Lucy, get with the times, and outright racist slurs hurled my way when she thinks no one is listening. I've tried to ignore her, to kill her with kindness, to be the bigger person. But Lucy is relentless. She seems genuinely offended by my mere existence. Like I somehow personally affronted her by daring to exist while black and also successful. I honestly think she believes I don't deserve what I have. The other day, I decided to treat myself. It had been a stressful week at work, deadlines looming, and I just needed to unwind. The sun was shining, the birds were chirping, and my backyard, my little sanctuary, was calling my name. I put on my swimsuit, grabbed a towel, and settled into a lounge chair in my backyard, ready for some much-needed vitamin D. I even put on some sunscreen, because I'm responsible like that. The air was warm, and I started to drift off, letting the sun kiss my skin and the gentle breeze lull me into a state of blissful relaxation. I was almost asleep when I heard it, a shrill, piercing voice that shattered the tranquility. Well. What do we have here? It was Lucy, standing at the edge of my patio, her face contorted in her usual mask of disapproval and hatred. You think it's appropriate to parade around like that in broad daylight? Have you no shame? I sighed. This was not going to be a relaxing afternoon. I sat up, trying to maintain my composure. Lucy, I'm in my own backyard. I'm not bothering anyone. Please just leave me alone. She just scoffed, her eyes narrowing. This neighborhood used to be so decent. Now look at it. She muttered something under her breath about those people and how they were ruining everything. I really wish I had a recording app on my phone ready at this very moment. Lucy, I said, my voice rising slightly, you are trespassing on my property. I need you to leave. Now. She took a step closer, her face inches from mine. I started to get slightly nervous, but I tried my best to not show any fear. Trespassing. This used to be a respectable neighborhood. You are bringing down the property values. And that display is just disgusting. She gestured to my swimsuit with a sneer. I was wearing a perfectly normal one-piece, by the way. Nothing even remotely scandalous. It was clear this wasn't about decency or property values. It was about her deep-seated prejudice. Get off my property, Lucy. I'm not going to tell you again. I stood up, hoping to intimidate her into leaving. But she didn't budge. Instead, she puffed out her chest and glared at me. I'm going to call the police, she declared, pulling her ancient flip phone out of her pocket. You're disturbing the peace, causing a nuisance, and probably doing all sorts of other illegal things. I wouldn't be surprised if you started dealing drugs too. I just rolled my eyes. This woman was completely unhinged. Go ahead, Lucy. Call them. They'll tell you to get off my property. I honestly thought she was bluffing. Who calls the police on someone for sunbathing in their own backyard? But Lucy was not bluffing. She dialed 911, her voice dripping with false indignation. Yes, I need to report a disturbance, she said into the phone, her eyes fixed on me with malicious glee. My neighbor is out here, causing a scene. She's being aggressive and harassing me and won't leave me alone. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was lying through her teeth. I couldn't hear the dispatcher, but I could hear Lucy's warped version of events playing out. I am sure that she was trying to paint me as some kind of violent criminal. Yes, she's threatening me. Lucy wailed into the phone. I'm afraid for my safety. Please send someone immediately. She hung up, a triumphant smirk plastered across her face. They're on their way. You're going to regret this, she said, her voice dripping with venom. I felt a surge of anger and disbelief. This woman was so determined to make my life miserable that she was willing to lie to the police. I knew I had to stay calm. I pulled out my own phone and started recording, just in case. Within minutes, a police car pulled up to the curb. 2 officers, a man and a woman, approached the backyard fence. Lucy, of course, rushed to greet them, launching into her fabricated tale of terror and victimhood. Officer, thank goodness you're here, she exclaimed, pointing a trembling finger at me. She attacked me. She started yelling and screaming and wouldn't leave me alone. I'm scared for my life. The male officer looked at me, then back at Lucy, a skeptical expression on his face. The female officer, however, seemed to be taking Lucy's claims at face value. Ma'am, can you explain your side of the story? She asked. I stepped forward, keeping my voice calm and steady. Officer, this woman is lying. I was simply sunbathing in my backyard when she started yelling at me, accusing me of all sorts of things. She trespassed onto my property and refused to leave. I asked her repeatedly to go, but she wouldn't. Then she called 911 and made up this story about me attacking her. I held up my phone, showing them that I had been recording the tail end of her rant. I only started recording when she called the police. The male officer took my phone and reviewed the footage. He watched as Lucy launched into her tirade, spewing insults and accusations. He saw her trespassing, heard her refusing to leave, and witnessed her calling 911 and fabricating a story about being attacked. Lucy, realizing that her lies were being exposed, started to backtrack. Well, I was just concerned about the neighborhood, she stammered. She's always causing trouble. The female officer looked from the footage to Lucy, her expression hardening. Ma'am, you stated to the 911 dispatcher that you were being attacked and harassed. She stated. That is a false report and a misuse of emergency services. Lucy began to get agitated, her voice rising in pitch. I didn't mean it like that. I was just upset. She's always. She trailed off, realizing that she was digging herself deeper into a hole. I felt a sense of vindication wash over me. Finally, someone was seeing Lucy for who she really was. It felt like the universe had heard all of my cries and decided to finally give me justice. It was like a movie scene where the underdog finally overcomes all odds. The male officer, having finished reviewing the footage, turned to Lucy with a stern look. Ma'am, you've made a false report to 911. You are also trespassing. I'm going to have to ask you to leave the property. Lucy's face turned a shade of purple that I didn't know was humanly possible. You're taking her side. You're not going to do anything about her indecent exposure. She shrieked, pointing at my swimsuit again. The female officer let out a heavy sigh. Ma'am, you need to calm down. The male officer was losing his patience. Ma'am, if you don't leave willingly, we will be forced to escort you off the property. Lucy huffed and crossed her arms. I'm not going anywhere. This is my neighborhood. I have every right to be here. The male officer stepped forward, his hand moving towards his taser. Ma'am, you are resisting a lawful order. I am going to taser you if you don't comply. I gasped. I didn't want things to escalate like this, but Lucy was clearly not backing down. Lucy's eyes widened in disbelief. You wouldn't dare, she spat. The male officer didn't hesitate. With a swift motion, he deployed the taser. Two prongs shot out and embedded themselves in Lucy's arm. She let out a blood-curdling scream and collapsed to the ground, her body convulsing. I cringed, even though she deserved it. It was still a disturbing sight. The female officer quickly moved to handcuff Lucy while she was still incapacitated. Once she was secured, they helped her to her feet and led her towards the police car. Lucy continued to scream and curse, her voice echoing through the neighborhood. "This isn't over. You haven't seen the last of me. I'm going to sue you all." As they bundled her into the back of the car, she glared at me with pure hatred in her eyes. "You did this. You're going to pay." The police car pulled away, leaving me standing in my backyard, stunned and slightly shaken. The silence that followed was deafening. The female officer approached me, her expression apologetic. "I'm sorry you had to go through that, ma'am. That woman has been a problem for a long time." I sighed. "You have no idea." She handed me her card. "If she bothers you again, please don't hesitate to call us. We'll be keeping a close eye on her." I thanked her, and she and her partner left. I stood there for a moment, processing what had just happened. Lucy Carter, my racist, hateful neighbor, had been tossed and hauled away in a police car. It was almost too surreal to believe. I went back inside, feeling a mixture of relief, exhaustion, and lingering anxiety. I replayed the events in my head, wondering if I could have handled things differently. But deep down, I knew I had done everything right. I had remained calm, documented the situation, and stood up for myself. And finally, after years of enduring Lucy's abuse, she had faced the consequences of her actions. I decided that I needed to treat myself to some ice cream after going through all of that. I spent the rest of the afternoon trying to relax, but it was difficult to shake off the feeling of unease. I kept expecting Lucy to come back, to launch another attack, to escalate the situation even further. But she didn't. As the sun began to set, a sense of peace started to settle over me. I realized that, for the first time in a long time, I felt safe in my own home. Knowing that Lucy will not be coming back at all. Days turned into weeks, and Lucy Carter remained absent. I later found out that she had been charged with making a false police report, trespassing, and resisting arrest. She was also issued a restraining order, preventing her from coming within 100 feet of my property. The other neighbors were shocked but not surprised by the events that had transpired. Many of them had witnessed Lucy's behavior over the years, but were too afraid to speak out against her. Now that she was gone, they started to share their own stories of Lucy's bigotry and harassment. They apologized for not intervening sooner, and expressed their support for me. I was touched by their words, and felt a sense of community that I hadn't experienced before. Life in my little suburban enclave finally started to feel peaceful. I could relax in my backyard without fear of being accosted by a hateful neighbor. I could listen to my jazz music without worrying about being accused of disturbing the peace. I could simply exist, without having to justify my presence or defend myself against prejudice. The experience with Lucy Carter was a painful reminder of the racism that still exists in our society. But it was also a testament to the power of resilience, the importance of standing up for yourself, and the possibility of finding justice, even in the face of adversity. I'm still healing from the emotional toll of the situation, but I'm also filled with hope for the future. I'm determined to create a life filled with joy, love, and peace, and to never let anyone like Lucy Carter steal my happiness again. I occasionally think about what happened that day, about the taser, the police car, and the sheer absurdity of it all. And sometimes, I even allow myself a small smile. Because in the end, good triumphed over evil. Justice prevailed. And Lucy Carter got exactly what she deserved. I might even consider putting my house up for rent at a higher price now that she's gone and I'm at peace.